All right. Do you guys see the first slide?
Yeah, the slide is clearly
Yeah.
visible. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So let me start with a disclaimer, maybe two disclaimers, that this is going to be a short presentation. I would like to leave a lot of room for any questions that we may have. Happy to have a discussion with Razor and with Arundhati as well. So that is one. And the second disclaimer is that unlike some of the, well, most of the other presentations, other talks you may have heard during this UnChained event, this my talk, is going to be non-technical. I'm going to be talking about Secureum. I'm going to be talking about scaling security and some of the efforts around that we are trying to do as a community in Secureum. Yeah. So Secureum, as you know, as you can see, is very simply put, it's security plus Ethereum. And the idea there is that the entire focus is on the security aspects of Ethereum, right? And so far, all of this, most of this has been in the application security space. So smart contracts, we haven't really had a chance to go deeper down into some of the more protocol specific aspects or some of the infrastructure and other. I mean, there are so many aspects to the security of Ethereum, right? So that is sort of the origin of Secureum. And just to sort of give a bit of context and backstory to Secureum, as with many projects, Secureum started as a side project roughly about a year ago, Jan of 21. Um, it started as a newsletter while I was still working with Eat Status. So I just started writing. I mean, this is, you see a lot of security researchers doing this, is to write and share their research, their learnings with the community, right? So it's in many ways peer-to-peer, even from that perspective. So I wanted to do a similar thing. So I started writing a weekly newsletter on Substack. And I started off with sort of perspectives on Web3 security, trying to just share my thoughts on what or how Web3 security is different, at least my perspectives on how it is different from the Web2 security space that's obviously been around for, well, as long as computing has existed, right? So did a bit of that, looked into ETH2 as it was called back then, started looking at some of the protocol exploits and the reasons behind that. So did that for maybe about 10 weekly newsletters for around 10 weeks. And then realized that there is much more that can be done, that needs to be done in this space. And this was really around building a community, building a lot more educational content, building a structured approach to a lot of us who wanted to get into this space, who may have been researchers, been building products and services in the Web2 space, in the traditional internet, AppSec, pen testing, what have you, right? All these aspects. And for all of us who wanted to jump into the security, well, the Ethereum security space or smart contract security space, there is a lot of content available. And a lot of this is really from the various smart contract auditing firms, be it TrailerBits, be it Consensus Diligence, Open Zeppelin, all these teams in their spare time, right, have been sharing a lot of the research and um, thoughts and ideas and best practices that they've been using to improve the security of the space. So all this existed, but there wasn't really a structured approach, right? So when somebody, even like me, wanted to get into the space, you would, I mean, this was back in 2016, 17. I don't think there were so many Telegram channels or Discords yet. So you would look up and you would read up the solidity documentation, you would look up the white paper, yellow paper, you would join a couple of these channels, be it Reddits or Jitters, and look at GitHubs, look at the EIPs, look at ERCs, look at the Open Zeppelin libraries, whatever existed back then. Look at the Solidity compiler and the various the evolutions, the revisions of that, right? So all that was good, but we're all sort of used to structured approaches, be it in schools, be it in colleges, universities, or online courses or wherever, right? So something structured, something more definitive always helps. So that was sort of the motivation behind Secureum and behind the concept of a bootcamp, right? And this wasn't new. I mean, the problem was well known that there is content and there is a lot of demand, but nobody was really doing it, right? I mean, they were doing it. I think there were a couple of efforts, very sincere efforts that were being done. One of the big ones that I was aware of, I was part of, was the Gitcoin kernel initiative that I'm sure many of you are aware of, maybe have been part of as well, right? So they have this concept of kernel blocks. So back then, I think it was kernel block 3, and there were multiple tracks. There was a security track. Corey Petty from Status was heading up the security track, and I was at Status, so I was helping him sort of work with that community and talk to them and sort of build material and organize an effort around it. So that was sort of, again, a backstory to the motivation, but that was more generic, right? It wasn't only smart contract security or only Ethereum smart contract security. So my motivation there was that there is so much that can be done just focusing on Ethereum smart contract security and not for now worry about other chains or other layers of the stack and so on. So that was really the motivation, and someone proposed that if I was really serious about this, then I should I should really experiment with this approach. So that's what I did, and I'll talk a bit more about the bootcamp in a few minutes. But the main motivation around the bootcamp was really this aspect, right? So for I'm sure everyone who's dialed into this event is aware of this meme, right? The UAP meme. And what this really signifies is the state of security, the state of smart contract security in the Web3 space. I mean, there's nothing, I mean, it's not even specific to Ethereum, it's not specific to smart contract, it's really all over the place, right? What this indicates is, at least to me, is that there is a lot of this happening, right? It's very common. I mean, if you're on some of the widely known Telegram channels or Discords that work on Ethereum security, then you are probably familiar with this, right? The frequency of this is really, really high. Maybe not every day, but there's at least once a week, and depending on what bar there is, if it is a $1 million hack, maybe nobody even notices that, depending on what chain it is, what protocol it is. But this is very common. Protocols, there are many, many vulnerabilities, unfortunately, in the various protocols deployed on the blockchains, and many of them get exploited, right, over time. And this, unlike the Web2 space, the impact here is immediate and it is tangible, right? And what, I mean, people here may obviously be aware of this, but what that means is that unlike in the Web2 space, it is not simply a password database dump or a denial of service, or let's say, the extreme cases of ransomware, where the impact is sort of delayed, right? It may be immediate to some extent, but it's not immediately felt by the end users in many cases. And there is a way to sort of address that by the authorities that are responsible for the security. So in this case, in the Web3 security case, or in the smart contract security case, the tokens, the ether, or whatever we are talking about that is being managed by the smart contracts, when they are exploited, they are lost to the attacker, to their addresses immediately, and in many cases, irreversibly. Right. So unless we get into specifics of, well, these tokens went into some centralized exchanges, or certain tokens that could be and addresses that could be blacklisted. Right. So without going deeper into those details, if you zoom up, the idea here is that the state of security is still very bleak, and there are many reasons for that. It's not like nobody's doing anything about it. We are really very early in this space. Ethereum itself is less than, well, it is around 7 years, into this. Into the deployment, and the blockchain space as such, even if you go all the way to Bitcoin, it's just over a decade old, right? So when you contrast it to the Web2 space, to the web space, to the internet, right, that we have known and that we use, we're looking at decades of work, right? All the way from the 1950s and 60s and 70s, with the ARPANET and with all the languages, with the web. So we've had a lot of time to actually get to where we are in the Web2 space, and the picture there isn't rosy either. Right, the state there is well, as we know, it's still it's very comparable to where we are in the Web3 space. So there are many differences. So I talk a bit more about this in one of the articles that I've written. But the key point here is that this is not just a meme; it's very real, and there are many fantastic researchers, white hats. Many of them presenting at this event, many of them hosting this event, many of them listening to this event, who are trying to help better the security here, right? So, what's the point of all this, right? The point here is that a lot of the security techniques, right, are mostly manual. Because if things were completely automated, if you had automated tools that could prevent bugs from getting into smart contracts, that could detect bugs in smart contracts, that could monitor deployed smart contracts and prevent any attacks on them, prevent the exploits. If that were to be the case, then then it would just be a matter of adoption of those tools and techniques, right? But unfortunately, we're not there yet. So again, many reasons for that. The one big reason is, like I said, we're very early in this space. We have many tools and techniques being developed. The commonly used tools in this space that you would come across from a security perspective are Slither, Echidna, Mythex, Mithril, the Certoras prover tool, SFT checker, the Solidity compiler itself that has a lot of these things built in. Then you have a variety of Open Zeppelin smart contracts that have been community vetted, audited, that have raised the bar. You have, like I said, the compiler itself, where many security checks are now built in. The most famous one being the bound checks that got into the Solidity compiler 0.8 and above. So all these things are happening, but yet a vast majority of the security exploits, security vulnerabilities, tools, if you go down that stack, right, or if you go in that flow, they're still mostly manual. And the reason for this is there are many reasons, but one big reason is something that is fundamental to how programming works itself, something based on how humans interact with tools. So you obviously need humans. We are the ones building out the protocols, right? Be it the DeFi protocols, NFT, DAOs, whatever it is, right? So that's one aspect. Then humans obviously are the ones building out the tools, be it the compilers, be it the slithers, be it the IDEs, be it the hard hats, right? Or be it the monitoring tools, be it the bug bounty platforms. All these are being built by humans. We haven't got into a point where we have AI based techniques for automatically building these tools yet. So that being the point, from a philosophical perspective, humans are error prone for various reasons, and errors creep into all aspects of all aspects of the cycle that I just talked about. So obviously, errors creep into smart contracts. Even the most well-intentioned, security-minded developers do introduce bugs unknowingly. Let's ignore all the intentional bugs and the rugs for now, right? So if you look at security-conscious developers who are using the state-of-the-art tools, the complexity, the state of the stack, and when I say the state of the stack, I mean the Ethereum protocol itself is evolving. We have a big merge coming up. We have the compiler evolving at warp speed, really, and for the right reasons, right? New features are being introduced, security and otherwise. Then we have the applications itself that are exploring several dimensions, be it various DeFi protocols, NFTs, DAOs. I mean, those are the names that often come up, but there are so many different applications, and a lot of these are because of how or the philosophical aspect behind the blockchain, definitely behind Ethereum, is the permissionless, borderless, open paradigm, right? So anyone, anywhere can actually build and deploy onto the blockchain without being restricted by an app store, or without being restricted by the device they're on, or without being restricted by really anything else, really, right? So all these things really contribute to the vulnerabilities and the exploits creeping in. And one big reason why a lot of these techniques are still manual is that a lot of the things that can be automated are being automated, right? So if you focus specifically on the bug detecting tools, right? The scanners, the linters, and the static analysis, formal verification tools, it's still humans who have to codify whatever they know about the security properties and build them into the rules that can be checked, right? So those can be done. And those rules obviously are as good as the humans who actually constructed those tools, wrote the specifications, got the requirements, converted them into the rules, be it properties or anything else really. But those rules can be done generically across smart contracts. Let's say, focusing on Solidity, what we can write those rules for Solidity, right? With respect to Solidity and with respect to the EVM, right? So all these aspects of reentrancy, bound checks, modifiers, anything that can be codified at this level of the stack can be codified and will be codified, has been codified if you look at Slither and all these other tools, right? Now, what cannot be generically codified is all the things that are application logic specific. And that forms a bulk of the issues that we are seeing today, right? So that aspect of application logic, and that sort of includes the economic vulnerabilities as well. So those are very specific to the application, to the smart contract, and those are really particular to the specification design and the implementation of that particular project or that particular application. So a generic tool such as Slither or any, whatever your favorite tool is in this space, cannot sort of generalize that rule without knowing what that application logic is, right? So that's sort of inherently the definition of application logic. And that, and this is nothing new to the Web3 space. This is obviously a problem in the Web2 space. If you look at any software application, there's only, so many rules that can be generic across the applications, across the OS, across the browser plugins, or anything that you're looking at, right? So this manual process means that we need, obviously more people, right? We need more humans to write these rules, to run these tools, and to do everything really in this space, right? So that is great. So that's really a motivation. So that's good, right? I mean, especially for all the security folks, it means that there is a lot of demand in the security space it has been so for the last 2-3 decades, and definitely so in the Web3 space for the last several years now, right? And it's only building up, right? I mean, the demand is only building up. Now, that's great. So, if you look at basic economics, if there is a high demand, then supply should match the demand, which means that there should be a good supply of people who understand what the issues are. Now, that is the problem, right? So in this case, the demand obviously for people who have knowledge of Ethereum, not just Ethereum, not just developers, right? You need to have a security mindset. So that is something that is not that can't be turned on by the flip of a switch. It needs to be learned. You need to understand what a trust model is. You need to understand what a threat model is. You need to understand security has been around ever since computing. Well, even before that, right? If you look at cryptography, you can go like centuries ago, and all these things really existed, right? So you need to understand a lot of that and more when you look at the Web3 space, right? So that is not an easy thing to do, and that is sort of what leads us to where we are, which is the unsustainable security pyramid, as I look at it, right? So we have Ethereum, and then we have billions of dollars of value, right? I mean, if you look at Ether's value and you look at all the protocols and their tokens on Ethereum, you look at all the stable coins on Ethereum, and really, I mean, the whole ecosystem that way is sort of connected, right? With even other blockchains, we have bridges. So things are not isolated, not siloed as we may think, right? So when you have all these billions of dollars of value in thousands of protocols, and unfortunately, the security of all that value and protocols is being shouldered by really hundreds of experts, right? And this is, this is probably being generous. So people have actually tried to look at or try to identify, okay, how many people understand Ethereum security. And even if you go by very simple metrics, such as, okay, let's look at all the people interested in Ethereum security. So if you take the most popular Discords or Telegram channels, there are maybe 1,000 people, right? Like Secureum Discord, I think, has maybe 2,500 people, right? So these are all the people. I'm not claiming that everyone who knows or interested is on these channels, but this is a rough metric, right? So we have thousands of people interested, and maybe hundreds of people who have been looking at this for more than several months now. And this clearly, right, even if you do the basic math, this clearly is not sustainable, right? So that is the problem. That is really the motivation. I mean, this is a challenge, but there's also an opportunity for all of us here to actually fill this gap and to make, to increase the level of education, to build the community out so that there are more people who can really address the demand. And this demand is unlikely to reduce, right? It's only going to increase multifold by orders. So that's what we are looking at. And if you combine this with sort of the manual aspect that we talked about, right? How it's still a lot of human effort, then it means that right now we need to train many people, right? We need to train ourselves, and nobody's an expert in this space. We're all students. Things are evolving at such a speed that if you take a break of a weekend or a week or a month, you're really already out of touch with all the latest exploits that happen. You maybe missed out a couple of versions of Solidity, a couple of the latest libraries or the latest tools and the protocols. So things would have moved. So there is, we all of us need to be really running on the treadmill to be where we are, and we need to get more people onto this treadmill of Ethereum security. Right? So this is really sort of the first mission of Secureum. And let me jump on to the bootcamp part, right? So this is where Secureum's initial effort started and is headed. So Secureum's bootcamp, Epoch Zero, happened in the second half of last year. And this was made possible thanks to a generous grant from the Ethereum Foundation and to 3 sponsor partners, Consensus Diligence, Sigma Prime, TrailerBits, all of whom are leading security firms in the Ethereum security space, smart contract security space, auditing space, what have you. Right? So that is what made it possible. And what really happened during the bootcamp was that a lot of the content that Razor was referring to earlier was really curated content, right? There was maybe 20% of the content that I sort of contributed, but a lot of it was really curation of content that existed from the likes of, again, the people that you see here, right? The teams that you see here. TrailerBits, Slither tool has a lot of these rules codified. They have a lot of good documentation, diligence, and really Open Zeppelin, all the fantastic teams that are driving, that are raising the bar in the space. They have fantastic documentation. Now, what I did was to really curate it and make it more structured in a way that I thought would be helpful to myself and to others, hopefully. So that was sort of the motivation, and that is what resulted in this bootcamp, the content for the bootcamp, which is still being used. So we had 3 months of the bootcamp. The first 2 months were 8 weeks of structured effort, where the first week was really learning everything about Ethereum, compressed in 1 week. Then Solidity 101, Solidity 201 was really learning every line of documentation from the Solidity docs, right? And Open Zeppelin, all their libraries that are really used by every project today, right? So that was that formed the base layer, if you will. And then was really the security pitfalls and best practices. So that took all the participants through really all the curated content that talked about all basic pitfalls and best practices. There are about 200 of them, and this is just one checklist. There are many checklists. So this was just sort of as a table stakes that everyone needs to understand, but people are always welcome to add more to this to learn all the other checklists as well, right? So this was sort of the process. And then finally, in the last 2 weeks of the first part of the bootcamp, we all looked at the audit findings. So audit reports, as we all know, are a fantastic source of learning, of real-world protocols, of things that could have gone wrong but were caught by the audit teams. So that was what happened. And in that learn phase, every phase, obviously, we need to have an assessment. So we had 8 quizzes, timed quizzes. So that, that was sort of to assess the participants. And the reason for that was that the final stage of the bootcamp, the last month in December, we had 4 protocols that came in for a security review. Right, so the ones listed here: Primitive, Sherlock, Sushi, and Tracer. So participants went through that. So I believe it was a good experience for many of us. Obviously, there were things that could have been done better. A lot of learnings. We had about 650 participants who started off with the first quiz, and finally about 250 of them finished taking all the quizzes, right? So all these participants will be given NFT badges to sort of build their reputation, to showcase that they did indeed put that effort and got a particular score in the quiz or in the review, right? So that was Bootcamp Epoch 0. And what we are doing now is using the learnings from Epoch 0, we sort of jumped through all the other numbers and we straight away went to Epoch Infinity. And the reason for that is that it didn't feel like a 3-month or a 1-month sort of a discrete bootcamp made sense in the crypto world, right? We wanted participants to join whenever they want, wherever they are. And by the way, the bootcamp is completely async. Secureum completely runs on the Discord. The website is unfortunately outdated. So if you're looking for Secureum, then please do join the Discord. That's where all the announcements are made, right, with respect to the bootcamp. So Bootcamp Epoch Infinity, and I realized that I think already out of time, so I'm going to be stopping in a minute. Bootcamp Epoch Infinity is structured as an infinite series of races and cares, right? What you see on the slide, right-hand side of the slide here. So race is just a catch-all term for a quiz. It could be a challenge of any sort. It could be a CTF or anything else in the future. But that is really what is used as an assessment for the participants to see if the participants understand Solidity, Ethereum, smart contract security, right? So participants are welcome to join the Discord at any point. They're welcome to look at all the content that has already been created and curated from Box Zero. It's all there on Substack, it's on YouTube, and they're welcome. I mean, they're encouraged to look at external content, be it be it from the Discord here, be it from UnChained, be it from Open Zeppelin, be it from Immunify, any of the fantastic teams that are trying to raise the bar here, right? So read at your own pace whenever you want, and when you're ready to, when you feel ready, then register using a Google form to participate in the race. And there is one race, at least one race that happens every month. We had the first race happen in Feb. There's one more that is going to be announced in March, first week of March. So people take this. This is again a very short, it's like a 16-minute multiple choice quiz that really tests if people understand the basics of Solidity, basics of Ethereum, basics of smart contract security. And the top participants, this is obviously scored, the top participants in the race are invited for the various cares. And CARE here stands for Comprehensive Audit Readiness Evaluation. So it's another term for a security review, but it's not an audit. It happens before an audit. It's really audit readiness. So all the learnings from the various checklists that participants have understood, they apply those on the protocol that comes in, that collaborates with Secureum in that 1 week, right? So it's a 1 week effort. And as you see, we've been collaborating with multiple partners, and all these have happened just in the 1 or 2 months, right? So in Jan, Feb, and March. As an example, Badger DAO, the protocol is going to come in for a week of care in the first week of March, right? So people, the top participants in a race in Feb will be invited to participate in that care. So they do the security review, they discuss, collaborate, and they write up a report. And at the end of 1 week, they submit the report, right? And then Secureum compiles, curates, right, all the valid findings from those reports and provides that to the protocol, right? So the protocol is benefited because this is an audit readiness, and it really helps them move security, it helps them shift left to security, right? So they are better prepared when they go for an audit that is 3 months or 6 months down the road, ideally as close to the audit as possible. And the auditing team is happy because they are getting more mature protocol code that has been sort of cleaned up of all the low-hanging security pitfalls and best practices have been implemented, right? So that the audit team can actually use their valuable time in diving deep into the manual analysis, into the application logic, use the formal verification tools. All that requires a lot of effort. Now, they don't have to worry about any of the low-hanging, basic pitfalls that should ideally have been fixed earlier on. So that's what CARE is about. And CARE X is really a customized care engagement that Secureum is working with multiple partners. So right now we are working with Spearbit, with Sherlock. So Sherlock we had a capture the flag, which was very interesting. Can talk more about it later if we have time. We're also doing one with Certora, which is really a 5-week effort where the participants are being trained with the prover technology. And obviously the incentives are the NFT badges, but then some of these collaborators also have incentives, financial incentives. Some of them are, all of them are really looking to hire a lot of these participants because they've been trained, they have shown that they have performed really well in the races, they have cared for the protocol, or they've done the CTF or any of those things, right? So those are the various things that are going on with the Secureum Bootcamp. And I will stop there with that. And on another interesting note, Secureum is also, besides the bootcamp, We're also trying to get the community around Ethereum, around the Ethereum security ecosystem. So there is a TrustX event. This is the first in-person event that Secureum is hosting and organizing in Amsterdam as part of the broader Dev Connect event. Would love to see a lot of the people here join us at that event. Again, this will be live streamed for free, and in-person attendance. The details will be shared soon. So with that, let me stop. I don't know if I have any more time, but thank you.